Okay, as it is now noon, we will start. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to the American Studies Information Session. My name is Dr. Monica Steinberg. I'm an assistant professor in American Studies and I teach classes on the history of art within North America and Canada, but with a global perspective. My colleague today is Dr. Barbara Fernandez Maleta, an assistant professor in Latin American Studies, and she teaches classes on Latin American literature. So I'm going to give you an overview of the North American aspect of the American Studies program, and then Dr. Barbara Fernandez Maleta will share details about the South American portion of the American Studies program. So, what is American Studies? American Studies is an interdisciplinary program. This means you will have the opportunity to learn about a broad range of fields within the Americas. You can learn about film, history, art, music, literature, political science, and popular culture. With regard to North America, you can learn about the history of film and the development of Hollywood. You can examine early 20th century silent films such as Safety Last. This film is infamous for the scene in which its star clutches the hands of a large clock as he dangles from the outside of a skyscraper high above moving traffic. And you can learn about the history of American television and how it intersects with depictions of domesticity in the home, covering everything from the Brady Bunch of the 1960s and 70s to the 1990s and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, considering how the concept of family expanded and intersected with American popular culture. You'll learn about how popular music played a big role in the history of North America. Classes will cover iconic figures such as Elvis Presley and consider his work alongside the development of communication technologies such as radio, television, and film. The history of the United States will also be traced through its monuments, such as Mount Rushmore in South Dakota, and its depiction of 4 former presidents on the side of a mountain: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. Coursework also covers the road in American culture. The road occupies an iconic place within the United States. It is a point of obsession for photographers such as Robert Frank, who published these photographs in his book, The Americans of 1958. And the road is a point of inspiration for writers such as Jack Kerouac. Kerouac wrote the fictionalized but also autobiographical novel On the Road. He typed the original manuscript using a typewriter on a 36.5-meter long roll of paper, and he wrote the entire text in a 20-day coffee-fueled flurry. And the road is a major element in films such as Easy Rider of 1969. This film traces a couple of bikers traveling through the American Southwest and South, and it deals with issues such as class, race, and gender in the United States and captures aspects of the counterculture lifestyle. You'll also be able to learn about the history of the urban environment, and the iconic cities of the United States will be discussed. You can learn about San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York. In classes I teach, you can learn about art in America. We would cover iconic works of pop art by Andy Warhol and his depiction of celebrities, ranging from Marilyn Monroe to Elvis Presley. We would also cover more humorous performance artworks, such as projects wherein artists dressed up as Mr. Peanut on the left and ran for mayor of Vancouver in British Columbia, Canada. And how artist Vermin Supreme on the right wears a rubber boot on his head and has run for president of the United States every 4 years since 1987. His political platform includes a promise to give every American a free pony, to support good dental hygiene laws because you have to brush your teeth, and to prepare for the zombie apocalypse. And we'd look at street art by Banksy, the artist who infamously hides their identity. And we would discuss his various pranks and intrusions into the New York urban environment over 1 month in 2013. While courses in American Studies are broad and cover a range of topics, you'll also have the opportunity for some real hands-on learning. As an American Studies student, you will have the opportunity to do an internship. You could earn course credit while gaining experience in the workplace. And former students have interned at organizations throughout Hong Kong, including Hong Kong Disneyland and the American Chamber of Commerce. And you can join the annual summer field trip for course credit to the United States. On your 2-week trip through the United States, you will visit cities such as Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. In Philadelphia, you'll learn about the Liberty Bell, which became famous after a short story claimed, albeit fictionally, that the bell cracked, you can see the crack here, that the bell cracked after being rung on July 4, 1776, when Congress voted for independence from Britain. And on the field trip, you'll also travel to Washington, D.C., where you'll be able to see the Capitol building and learn about the 3 branches of the U.S. government. The legislative branch, which makes law. This comprises Congress, which is made up of the House of Representatives and the Senate. The executive branch, which carries out laws. This includes the president, the vice president, the cabinet. And the judicial branch, which evaluates laws. This includes the Supreme Court and the other courts. And you'll have a chance to travel to New York City, where you'll see the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty is a colossal sculpture on Liberty Island in New York Harbor, and it is, in fact, a gift to the United States from France. And you'll also visit Ellis Island, a small island in New York Harbor. Nearly 12 million immigrants passed through Ellis Island in the 19th and early 20th centuries. They arrived in New York from countries far and wide by way of many weeks-long journeys by steamship across the Atlantic Ocean. So, American Studies is a program that considers the past and the present. It includes art, literature, music, film, history, political science, and popular culture. And now, I suppose you're wondering, did any famous people ever study or work in American Studies? Why, yes, they did. Maya Angelou was a professor of American Studies. She is a famous American poet and civil rights activist who published the award-winning book of poetry, Just Give Me a Cool Drink of Water Before I Die. Tom Wolfe got a PhD in American Studies. He's an author and journalist and wrote fascinating books, one of them titled The Candy-Colored Tangerine Flake Streamline Baby. Janine Garofalo earned a bachelor's degree in American Studies. She's an actress and comedian who played Heather Mooney in the movie Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion. Katie Couric earned a bachelor's degree in American Studies. Katie Couric is a television journalist and author who has worked for many different American news broadcasters, including CBS, NBC, and ABC News. Ken Thompson studied American Studies. He is a very wealthy American businessman and former chairman, president, and CEO of Wachovia. So, what can you do with an American Studies degree? Well, just about anything. Our alumni have gone on to pursue PhDs at Columbia University in New York and master's degrees at the University of Cambridge and University College London. And they work as journalists, traders, filmmakers, researchers, writers, librarians, bankers, and even therapists. An American Studies degree offers a world of possibilities. And now that I have covered the North American portion of the program, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Barbara Fernandez Moleda, who is going to share some of the amazing things that you'll be able to learn about Latin America within the American Studies program. So, Barbara,
yes, thank you. Thank you, Monica. I'll be sharing screen. So let's see, is it working?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so Latin American Studies at Hong Kong U is part of the American Studies program, as Dr. Steinberg said to you. I'm a Latin Americanist from Latin America. I'm from Chile, actually. And the American Studies program expanded to a more hemispheric approach since last year. So since 2019, we have started having courses that also include Latin America. So why should we study Latin America? Obviously, in a globalized context, we need to get to know and understand as many cultures as possible. The School of Modern Languages and Cultures at Hong Kong U is very much concerned that we have different cultures being taught and learned here at the university. So we also have African studies, we also have Russian studies, and we also have Arabic. But Latin America wasn't represented, so we now have it. So also diplomacy and business relationships depend on understanding of each other's cultures. And this understanding is developed through the learning of film, literature, identity, history, etc. So Latin America has been developing rapidly in the last few decades in mostly economic terms, but the cultures of Latin America have a long-standing history of many centuries. So rich cultures and landscapes have inspired literary works, but also great productions in the arts. And there are many instances in which Latin American works also relate to American works in the sense of works from the United States. So this is also something that we look into in our courses. Also, Latin America is a sought after tourist destination, and we also have very important icons, cultural icons such as Shakira or Maluma or different singers that you may hear in parties. It's normally dance music. We are characterized for our dance music. So what are Latin American studies? Together with what Dr. Steinberg said about American studies is very similar in that sense, because we study the region of Latin America from a variety of perspectives. That means that there are interdisciplinary approaches to different phenomena. For example, 20th century dictatorships or revolutions or literary movements. So we can approach things from the perspective of literature, political science, economics, art history, film, etc. So our courses study relationships between the countries in the region, could be Chile, Argentina, Brazil, Peru, etc., and how they relate to other regions in the world, such as China, Europe, and the United States. Our relationship with the United States is very close, also very tense. So we need to find ways to approach these situations. We study relevant and thought-provoking topics, such as the Cuban Revolution, the dictatorship in Chile and Argentina, through the perspective of literature and film. So it's not only a course in which we're going to see historical aspects or economic aspects, we're also going to see the way the arts in its different manifestations develop these topics. Also, together with studies of the region, students are encouraged to learn the main European languages studied there, which are taught at Hong Kong U at a very high standard, and these are Spanish and Portuguese. You're more than welcome to double major in American Studies and any of the languages, or to choose one of these languages as a minor if you would like to learn about Latin America in their own language. For now, I am teaching on Latin America in English, but if anybody's interested in learning the native texts, you can also have that opportunity if you take an interest in any of these languages. So Latin America is a vast region with many cultures. So North America is normally understood as Canada, United States, and Mexico. So within the Latin American section, we have Mexico. Then we have Central America and the Caribbean, and the largest region is South America. So we can learn about different processes and different historical figures. For example, we have Pancho Villa from the Mexican Revolution. We studied the Mexican Revolution. This is Fidel Castro from Cuba, the leader of the Cuban Revolution. And that's also an interesting topic to talk about because it also has to do with the history of the United States and their foreign policy. So it all depends on how we take a look at these phenomena. This man here is Alberto Fujimori, of Japanese descent, who was the president of Peru a few decades ago. Here we have a native woman from the Amazonian region in Brazil, bearing in mind that Latin American cultures are very heterogeneous. So it's not only about talking about history in each country, but also to understand that Latin American identity comes from a mixture of cultures between the native indigenous populations that are very many, and also the different European settlers, and also African slaves brought from mostly Nigeria. So our identities are very mixed, and this is something that we also pay attention to in the Latin American section, also in the American section, because this is some part of history that we share at a continental level. So here we have Evita Perón, a very famous political figure from Argentina in the 1950s. And over here you have Nobel Prize awardee from Chile, Gabriela Mistral. So there is a variety of traits and sides of history and people that we will be studying in the Latin American Studies courses. Now, you might be interested in visiting Latin America, so the university offers you a variety of options. So we enjoy great relationships with the best universities in the region, for now in 3 countries, but this is expanding. That's also part of my job here. But for now, you could take an exchange semester or an exchange year in Chile, Brazil, Mexico, Uruguay, and in the future, it will be Argentina. So it all depends on what you want to do and for how long you'd like to do this exchange. Now, there will be a Latin American field trip course that I'm organizing during the following years. For now, unfortunately, we cannot do much with the COVID situation, but I can assure you that is myself and all the professors of the American Studies program. We're working very hard to offer you field trip courses to either the United States or Latin America. In the case of Latin America, I'm interested in developing a course to both the northeast of Brazil and Argentina. So in this picture, you see the city of Salvador, which is one of the most important colonial cities of Brazil, which used to be the capital of the Portuguese Empire when they were in Brazil. Then you have a picture of the metropolis of Sao Paulo, which is where we would actually arrive from Hong Kong by plane. And on the right-hand side, you have an image of the carnival in Salvador. So what if the trip has a carnival event going on at the same time? On the other hand, we also have the possibility of a visit to Foz do Iguaçu or the Iguaçu Cataracts, which are on the border between Argentina and Brazil. In the center, you have a picture of the famous obelisco in the widest street in the world in the city of Buenos Aires. And also visiting Buenos Aires, why wouldn't we go see people dancing tango? It's a lovely type of music. Also, we have developed very good relationships with the consulates of these countries in Hong Kong, and we are expecting to expand this more. Also for our students to enjoy more internship opportunities, also with Latin American companies, NGOs, or the consulates themselves. We still have to see that. So briefly to finish, right now the countries that we are studying in our courses are Chile and Argentina in the course that we develop on dictatorships in the late 20th century. We also have Nicaragua over here, Cuba, and this Mexico-United States flag represents Chicano identity, which is the Mexican heritage within the United States. They write in English, Spanish, Spanglish. So we also see that from a Latin American studies perspective. And also Uruguay, who is also that they are also considered within the Southern Cone studies of late 20th century dictatorships. In the future, from next year, I'll be happy to announce that we will expand our coverage of countries, including Brazil, Colombia, Guatemala, and Mexico. So if you have any interest in Latin America, please let us know. And also in the United States and Canada, we were trying to cover as much as possible. And as Monica rightly said, there are many possibilities for jobs once you graduate from these degrees. And also, of course, feel welcome to feel inspired into pursuing studies in the best universities around the world in both American and Latin American studies. So, gracias, muito obrigada, and thank you. Monica, may I ask you a couple of questions?
Of course.
Well, I'd like to know a little bit more about what the students are doing after doing a degree with us in American Studies. You say they're into journalism and pursuing postgraduate studies.
Oh, yes.
Can you provide more details about where they are right now?
Well, there is a wonderful tab on the American Studies website where potential majors in American Studies can read all about what alumni are doing. One of our recent graduates is now earning her PhD in political science at Columbia University in New York. She just started this September. She majored in American Studies here at HKU. Darius Wong of the class of 2017 really found what his passion in the American Studies program, and he found that he really loved to do research. And so now he is working in a library, both doing his own research and helping others to do theirs and to create new knowledge. Another fascinating graduate of our program went on to earn 2 master's degrees, one from the University of Hong Kong and another from University College London. We have another graduate who is both a filmmaker and a therapist, juggling both creative and practical skills, which she learned in our program, and she was able to integrate this multidisciplinary training into all these different facets of her life. So American Studies really trains people for a career in anything. It's a very broad education. It helps you learn how to think critically and creatively with both a local and a global perspective.
So driven students achieve whatever they want, and in the end, we give them the tools, but they go out there and develop themselves to a very high level.
Absolutely, it's very impressive what our alumni have been able to do.
Can I ask you more questions? How about the specific courses that you're teaching? Is there anything you would like to share with the audience?
Well, my specialty is not just American art, but it's really art and law. And I look at how artists look at rules and how they follow those rules in very interesting, creative, and often humorous ways. So, for example, if there is a rule that says walk in a straight line, but it doesn't specify exactly how to walk, you'll have artists that do silly walks, that walk on their hands. And you can take that idea and apply it to many contexts, such as artists that run for president of the United States just because they can. And they do so wearing a rubber boot on their head and promoting dental hygiene laws and good toothbrushing because they can. So Barbara, could you tell our listeners about some of the courses that you teach?
Yes, certainly. One of my courses actually deals with Latin American and US cultural interactions. And for this course, I have 3 units. The first one has to do with Chicano literature. So we start from north to south. And we look into a novel called The House on Mango Street, which is about a Chicano girl that lives in Chicago. So she talks about all of the struggles she's got by living in the United States, having Mexican Spanish heritage, and all that that means to her, facing discrimination sometimes, seeing the assumptions about her culture, and the way that she grows as a human being. This is a novel of growth. So this is a woman that is developing herself as a teenager during the novel. So we also learn about life. The second unit talks about the relationship between the United States and Cuba through the works of Afro-descendant poets. So we have Afro-descendant poets, Laston Hughes from the United States, from New York, and also his friendship with Cuban poet Guillen. I forgot the name now. I shouldn't. Nicolas Guillen. And they sent letters to each other. So we not only study the poems, but we also study their letters to see how much they loved each other, how much advice they gave each other about how being a good poet. And the last unit is on Nicaraguan writing, and this is kind of a tense unit because it's poetic responses to United States military interventions in the country. So here we have to see from the Nicaraguan and from the US perspective, what was that all about and why poetry is a good way to express dissent and to also express that there can be other ways of doing things. So we're talking about a context in which there were guerrillas, there were people being killed, but some activists, instead of engaging in violence, decided to rise. And those are the things we study today, many decades after. So in the end, the legacy is the writing. That's the first course I taught last year. This year, we are incorporating a course on Chilean and Argentinian dictatorships and the way that literature and film depict those periods and the way that people reacted and decided to have their own views on those contexts. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Barbara. As we have 2 minutes left, we can take maybe one question if someone has thought of one during this interim, or we can just, otherwise we will just say adieu and encourage you to consider taking American Studies courses and possibly majoring in the program because it is a very wide-ranging field of study that prepares you for many walks of life. Okay, well, we hope to see everybody around campus next year. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you. Adios.
Bye.
Ciao.